carry up to 96 aircraft.
It is an armed airport. You have all of those workshops and areas underneath the flight deck, called the hangar deck, where they service the planes and where the planes are usually stowed. There are 3 elevators, and that's how those planes are brought up to the flight deck or taken below.
The carrier is the floating base for one squadron of TBD Devastator torpedo bombers, the slowest aircraft, which are typically held back until enemy surface ships have been spotted. One squadron of Grumman F-4F Wildcat fighter planes patrols near the ship, guarding it from air attack. And 2 squadrons of SBD Dauntless Scout bombers are routinely deployed to search 200 square mile sectors in all directions for an enemy presence. If the enemy is located, the SBD, with a 2-man crew and a max speed of 250 miles per hour, can win an air-to-air shootout with the 2 50-caliber machine guns in its nose and dual rear-mounted 30-caliber free-floating machine guns. It also has the capability of hitting enemy ships with 1,200 pounds of bombs. With its cadre of warplanes, Enterprise is well equipped for battle with Japan. But none of the Big E's pilots have ever fired a shot in anger. How will they respond when the Empire of the Sun delivers its first attack? War with Japan is imminent. And while USS Enterprise is the supercarrier of her era, she won't be fighting alone. At sea, the carrier is like the quarterback of a football team. She's defended by cruisers and destroyers on the surface of the water around her, by scout planes, bombers, and fighter planes launched from her deck and patrolling the skies overhead. And sometimes, even by submarines beneath the waves out in front. The escort ships that sail closest to the carrier are the destroyers. A destroyer is a relatively small warship, typically with a displacement of about 2,200 tons, a length of some 400 feet, and a width of about 40 feet. Like Enterprise, a destroyer's largest guns are her dual-purpose 5-inchers, capable of firing 5-inch projectiles at either surface or air targets. When taking on airplanes, these guns don't go for a direct hit. They send up a barrage of shells, known as flak, which are fused to explode at a specific altitude, hopefully taking out any aircraft that are approaching the fleet. The explosions send out blasts of shrapnel that leave behind those distinctive puffs of black smoke.
The destroyers were the last line of defense before the Japanese could get to the carriers.
Larger gunships, called cruisers, are typically more distant from the carrier to serve as her first line of defense.
Their primary mission is to protect that carrier at all costs. Everything else is secondary.
It was a team effort.
U.S. submarines also occasionally lend the carrier a hand.
They're the eyes and the ears of that whole fleet. They can virtually be undetected. They're great for reconnaissance, and they can sink ships before they even know that they're there.
But Enterprise is the heartbeat of the task force. It takes thousands of men to keep this floating city on the move.
Clerks, yeomen, cooks, men in the anti-aircraft divisions, radar men, radio men, signalmen, different types of technicians. The ship typically has a Marine detachment, and their job is security for the ship, and they generally have battle stations. There are a lot of people on an aircraft carrier, and all of them are doing different jobs.
The average age aboard ship is 19 years old, and these young men have come from all across the country to serve on this massive melting pot. The decks echo with the accents of the Deep South and the Midwest. Ranch hands from Texas bunking with street toughs from Hell's Kitchen. Guys from Pennsylvania, Alabama, California, and everywhere in between. For many of these American boys, life aboard this megaship takes some getting used to.
I grew up in Round Rock, and there's 1,200 people in Round Rock when I left there. Went aboard the Enterprise, and there's about 2,800 on the Enterprise. It's like a city. You didn't know all of them.
The Enterprise was the biggest ship I'd ever seen in my life. In fact, when I walked up the gangplank for the first time, I was imagining, golly, there must be a swimming pool on here.
In 1941, the crew was still a largely unproven group of sailors and Marines. How they would respond in the heat of battle was anybody's guess.
Being afraid carries a lot of baggage with it. I was never so afraid that I wasn't able to carry out all my responsibilities 100%, because I, like everybody else aboard that ship, was determined we were not ever going to let our shipmates down. I think that one thing there kept us on the job regardless of what the circumstances were.
Toughness starts at the top. An Enterprise's task force is run by the toughest admiral in the Pacific, William F. Bull Halsey. Halsey's fearless and disciplined. And most importantly, he's a scrapper.
Bull Halsey was a man of great personal will, a firm commander, a man that wanted to be in the middle of the action, in the thick of the combat.
He was a fighting admiral. I have seen him many times on the bridge when we were under dive bombing attacks, shaking his fist and cussing those Japanese dive bombers. And he was out there. He'd have a helmet on, but that was about all.
His men immediately respect him. And over the next several months, they will come to love him too. In the fall of 1941, Halsey and the other American commanders have a wary eye on Japan. The Japanese have made several threatening moves in recent years, invading China and allying themselves with Germany and Italy to form the original Axis of Evil. The Empire of the Sun is anxious to expand its territories across Asia. The U.S. and her allies are determined to stop them. Attempts to negotiate with Japan have floundered, and American intelligence has intercepted ominous messages hinting at war. By November 27, 1941, talks with Japan have ceased. The following day, Admiral Halsey approves the issuance of a special order. Battle Order Number 1.